This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. A tycoon murders 2 young people in broad daylight. A cop is caught on camera beating a man. And what one man left in a hotel room in Phnom Penh will horrify you. But firstly, it's our headline story. 2 people were gunned down after an argument that is not even worthy of a fist fight, let alone a double homicide. The first to die in a hail of bullets was a 27-year-old male, and the second was his soon-to-be wife, who was just 25 years old. The gunman is a tycoon real estate businessman named Srey Sinha. The reason for the double murder is quite simply absurd, as it seems the 2 neighbours had been in an argument over a mango tree and a clothesline located on adjacent properties. The argument exploded into bullets and blood when the tycoon got upset by his neighbour being rude to him. So he went into his property and retrieved a loaded pistol. He returned and then pointed it at the neighbour and gunned him down in broad daylight. The dead man fell to the floor and was killed instantly. But the day's horror was not to end there, as the dead man's fiancée heard the argument and the gunshots, and in blind terror she ran to her lover's side. But that was to prove a fatal error, as the neighbour from hell was to strike again, as he then levelled his gun at the young woman and he shot her multiple times, an act of unprecedented cruelty. She was rushed to hospital but was announced dead on arrival. The gunman then fled the scene in his car, but it was not long before he was detained by police. The tycoon has now appeared in court, and he has been charged with double homicide. On this week's crime desk, a cop violently beats a member of the public, and it's all caught on camera. A barking dog causes a man to murder his neighbour, and what is left in a hotel room in Phnom Penh causes a maid to run screaming in terror. Now then, do you remember that Rodney King case that set America ablaze some years ago? It was a case of police brutality that had been caught on camera. And when the general public saw the recorded footage, it was not only Americans that were shocked by the utter brutality of the Los Angeles police officers, it was, in fact, the whole world that was shocked. Well, this week, a police officer here within the kingdom was caught on camera beating a member of the public. And to tell this tale, I think it's best I show you the series of photos that shocked so many. Firstly, we see the victim here in a very defensive pose, obviously showing respect to the officer. In this next photo, the officer is pointing at the victim, and the victim now looks rather concerned. Potentially, the officer is shouting at him. Then, in an appalling act of violence, the officer strikes the innocent man in the face with what looks like extreme force. And it was not just once, as the man was hit repeatedly. These photos emerged on social media and outraged many of the general public, and that outrage was to grow. The police officer has now been suspended by the Siem Reap Police Commissioner, but those on social media say that this is not enough, and the offending officer should be charged with assault for his criminal actions. Now then, we started off this newscast with a double murder that was carried out due to a row about a washing line and a mango tree. Well, we have another murder case that could well parallel that first one for lame excuses to murder someone. You see, it was in the dead of night in a rural area of Bakan district, an area more known for its gentle countryside and its gentle calm. But one night last week, that was all to change. For through the dark night air, there was a long and persistent barking from a dog. And it was that dog's howling that was to lead to murder. For at 10 p.m. that night, a Mr. Soeth could take no more of the dog's howls, as it kept him awake. So he got out of bed and went to his workbench, and he picked up a rusty hand axe. He then made his way through the still night to the house with the dog. But it was not the dog that was his intended victim, rather the owner. With his axe, he crept into the bedroom of the sleeping man, and with multiple blows, he hacked the man to death. The bedroom looked like a scene from a horror movie, as blow after blow of the axe struck the victim in the head. Afterwards, in a vain attempt to cover up his unbelievably barbaric crime, he dragged the bloody body to a drain and deposited the corpse there. But it was not long until it was discovered, and police soon pieced together the facts for this appalling crime. And the murderer was soon arrested. And right now, he is awaiting his trial date. Okay, so where do we stand this week? We have 2 shot dead in a row about a mango tree, a man axed to death in his bed due to a dog barking, and now we've got this guy whose crime is way, way, way worse than the other murders we have featured, not only for its cruelty, but its incomprehensible horror. You see, it all started when a maid on her daily duties unlocked the door to room 202 at the Dara guest house in Phnom Penh. She pulled in her cart and was about to go about her cleaning duties to get that room ready for the next guest. But what she found left her running from the room into the corridors in utter terror. For what she had discovered was the corpse of a battered 4-month-old baby. Police were immediately called, and the medical report showed that the child had not only been viciously beaten, but also strangled. The guest who had registered into room 202 the night prior was a 30-year-old male named Thun Tar Vin. But upon investigation, he was nowhere to be found. Police spread their net further to his hometown of Prey Veng, and it was not long until the suspect was brought in for questioning. And right now, he faces criminal charges for the brutal murder of a child that was just 4 months old. A life sentence has been handed down to a Bolivian woman who was caught at Phnom Penh International Airport trying to smuggle over 4 kilos of cocaine into the kingdom. She was caught with the drugs back in September the 10th of last year, after she had arrived on a flight from Malaysia. She was arrested by the Cambodian National Police after they had received information from the DEA That's the United States Drug Enforcement Agency. The police found on her over 40 packages of cocaine, and it was also hidden amongst her luggage. And at that very minute when it was discovered, her life ended. Everything she knew was now gone, as her next step was only ever going to be jail. It is easy to read the headline of these stories and move on, but the truth to this story, as so many like it, lays in the shadows of poverty. For it is often the desperate who feel compelled to risk their very lives to smuggle these drugs. And here is just one example. Diego Alvarado was a 41-year-old bus driver. He lived with his crippled wife and their 8 crippled children in a 3-room flat in Tijuana, Mexico. The children's ages were from 5 to 19. All had inherited their mother's hip disease. All had severe problems with walking. Doctors told Diego to get immediate medical attention, but there was no money. His wife laid in bed most days, enduring pulsing, burning pain, and Diego was desperate. Then men offered him $1,000 to drive 15 pounds of dope across the US border. He was caught and arrested. Now his crippled wife and children have a father in jail. So when you see stories like this, think of the tragedy that often lays behind the headline. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week. And here we are at the end of the show. Here I go, getting the weather up on my screen as I always do. Click, I'm getting better at that. Did you notice something awful about the show this week? My hair. What the bloody hell was going on with that? It was out of control. I knew I should have got a cut today, but the weather didn't let me, and that's why I'm staring at thunder and lightning right across the board. It's quite incredible for this time of year, but as always I say, remember this is localised rain. It's not a biblical flood. You just get yourself out of it for 20 minutes and you'll be absolutely fine. The humidity rising to nearly 80%, and the temperatures, as I'm looking across, have actually dropped. The high would be 35 degrees. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly roundup.